Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Cannabis Lab's monthly educational series. I'm Aisha Alves, and I run educational programming for C-Lab. For those of you who are not already a member, Cannabis Lab is a professional organization for folks in the cannabis industry, and our mission is to be a resource for people in the industry to help grow their careers or people who are aspiring to come in to have a community where they can learn and connect and grow. And every month, we do host an educational panel to make sure that we are spreading the wealth of knowledge that is available to us. And this month, we are discussing overcoming challenges, strategies for Black entrepreneurs in the evolving cannabis industry. And as a treat, you will have a guest host today, other than myself. I'm going to introduce Miss Roz McCarthy, who oversees minor, sorry, minorities for medical marijuana, and she is also the CEO and founder of Black Buddha Cannabis. Hi, Roz. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Aisha. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
You are so welcome. So before
Yeah,
I pass it on, I'm just going to give a quick, shout out and what is the word when you give a little commercial in there, a plug. If you are interested in joining C-Lab, you can join us at joinclab.com. It's going to give you information on the different levels and different ways that you can get involved. If you'd like to be involved in a speaker panel, please feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also with Flower Hire, so if you're looking for a job or if you're looking to build a team, you can reach out to myself. Roz, I'm going to let you take it away so you can introduce our esteemed guests, and I'll be here if
absolutely.
you need me.
Absolutely. So, guys, oh my goodness. So, thank you guys for having us. This conversation is so clearly needed. We're going to have an impactful, off the cuff, no chaser, just being very real and very intentional about the strategies needed for Black entrepreneur success in the ever growing cannabis industry. I want to do some housekeeping. Make sure you know that towards the end of this presentation, we're going to have it open for questions. So if you have any questions, anything that you want to pose out there, if you put it in the questions area, I'll do my best to make sure that it gets asked. And just stay open and be ready for a great conversation. Thank you, C-Lab, for partnering with Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Happy Black History Month. It is not by accident that we are on this topic. It is Black History Month, and we're excited to be able to celebrate Black excellence in cannabis. So without further ado, let me introduce my esteemed panel and allow them about 1 to 2 minutes to tell you guys a little bit about themselves, who they are, and what they do in this industry. And I will start, ladies first. Miss Tanisha Robinson, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Roz. Yes, hi, everyone. I'm Tanisha Robinson. Most people call me T. I've been an entrepreneur for the vast majority of my career. It is because I'm not particularly hireable. I swear too much. I don't own a dress, and I won't fix my hair. And I'm extremely willful and obviously likely to have authority issues. So thus I've had to build businesses to feed myself. So I started in kind of tech. I've always done consumer-facing things. So built a few things, sold a few things, burned a few things to the ground. Have been in kind of larger scale consumer packaged goods. So I built out North American operations for the largest craft brewery in Europe called Brewdog. And then from there started to build my own cannabis beverage company. That company is called Wonder, which is distributed in 8 states. And then through that, found my way to a large cannabis company out in California, one of the big publicly traded guys, where I worked as their chief transformation officer, and was also the general manager of Monogram, which was Jay-Z's weed brand. So that brought me to New York City about 2.5 years ago. After the merger of that company, did some advising and looked at other cannabis opportunities, and recently joined the team at Gotham here in New York City. We are building out a kind of high-end concept store and dispensary, and are going to be opening stores 2, 3, and 4 this year. So have pretty aggressive expansion plans, but so I've been in cannabis now about 5 years, and love consumer-facing stuff, and entrepreneurs are my people. So happy to be here and weigh in on the path ahead.
Oh my gosh, that's so freaking awesome. Thank you, T, so much. Next, we have Mr. Antoine Mordecon. Antoine, please introduce yourself.
Welcome to Cannabis family. My name is Antoine Mordican. I'm originally from the west side of Chicago, but I currently reside in the great state of Alabama. I'm the CEO and owner of Native Black Cultivation, which we are the first licensed issue Black-owned and operated medical cannabis cultivator here in the state. I also serve as the Alabama State Director for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I also serve on the board of directors for the Minority Cannabis Business Association. And a little bit about me, my background is traditionally in electrical engineering. I normally deal with utility infrastructure from the substation to the point of service. But however, I got off into the cannabis space back in college doing a research paper and just kind of started preparing myself and learned a lot about the cannabis plant in itself and started up my first company, which was Native Black Enterprise, operating as Native Black Farm, which we set up our business to be able to cultivate hemp for the purpose of smokable CBD flower to strategically prepare ourselves for the medical cannabis industry here in Alabama. We've been very proactive with a lot of the work it is that we've been doing here to be able to finally get medical cannabis here, then ultimately to finally be awarded a license. So I'm extremely excited to be able to have this conversation with you all today, because with this conversation, I'll be able to tell you what I am currently going through or what I have just recently went through to be able to overcome a lot of the challenges to finally be awarded the license, and then just to be able to leave a little bit of nuggets so everybody can be able to leave motivated and inspired as you continue on your kind of entrepreneurship.
All right, sorry, they muted me, but fantastic. Thank you, Antoine. So happy to have you. And last but not least, we have Mr. Barrington Rutherford. Barrington, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Barrington Rutherford. I come to the cannabis industry through a background in real estate development. I've been developing real estate since I was about 20 years old. And in around 2017, I joined Cresco Labs as Senior Vice President of Real Estate and Development. Went on to co-lead the Public Affairs Department there at Cresco before leaving. A few years ago, I joined Who's Holding, which is a cannabis-focused, it was a cannabis-focused family office. So I was CEO there for a while, and then finally Chief Operating Officer at Combs Global Cannabis Ventures, which was an acquisition vehicle in this industry. And so I'm really excited to be here. I've gotten to know you, Roz, and T. T is, she's a fantastic and brilliant mind here, and none of those things she said are true. She's not at all difficult to work with whatsoever. So I'm excited to be here and looking forward to a really, really exciting conversation with all of you.
Thank you so much, Barrington. And I'll wrap up by saying, as your host, also I've served in the advocacy side as the founder and the CEO of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and now on the brand side with Black Buddha Cannabis, that was just introduced to the marketplace about a year and some change ago, as a CPG wellness brand currently in 4 markets throughout the country. So you got like the best in my opinion. So get ready for the ride and let's go. So my first question, because I really want to level set, right? It's so important to level set. And the question is, why should cannabis care about the success or the failure of Black entrepreneurs in this space? And I'll throw that out. And I want to start with you first, and then I'll kind of go round robin or just jump in.
Sure, yeah. I think that there's a few layers to this for me. Certainly Black and brown entrepreneurs in particular and the Black community paid a very, very heavy price during the prohibition of cannabis. And so while I don't think we'll ever get something like reparations done, I deeply believe that cannabis is a singular opportunity in my lifetime for a meaningful chance at economic justice for Black and brown people, and for communities, not just individuals that were harmed by the war on drugs. Because if you think about extractive capitalism, right? Like tech, finance, insurance, AI, cotton. I always like to say cotton because it makes many people that don't look like us extremely uncomfortable. It's fantastic. But the reality is that extractive capitalism has kind of been the foundation upon which most opportunity for white people has been built. And I think that cannabis can or has a chance of being a path of something that I call inclusive capitalism, meaning that there is at least a hope for like substantive intentionality that companies want diverse workforces, want to create careers, because it's so early and so messy that people can build, not just be entrepreneurs, but build meaningful careers, which then can turn into entrepreneurship, but just, stability and a path for something that we've already paid dearly for. So I think that it's a really powerful window and moment that there are not many industries that are this small and this messy that will ever be this big. This is kind of a once in a lifetime chance I think we have.
I agree 100%. Barrington, same question. Why should cannabis care about the success or failure?
Yeah, look, I think I agree with everything T said. I would say that I think in addition, I think that the incumbent cannabis industry, though small and messy, completely agree with that with that characterization. The incumbent cannabis industry has this sort of special responsibility, I think, because of this price that Black and brown communities, especially Black communities, have paid through prohibition. I think that the industry has this, sort of special responsibility to help Black entrepreneurs get into the industry and be successful in the industry. And I think that responsibility can be lived out in any number of ways, but I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to, like keep that concept that while this isn't necessarily reparations, to T's point, it is, this is an opportunity that we won't likely see again. And so I just think that it means that we have to keep sort of pressure on all of the sort of stakeholders to this industry and keep everyone sort of focused on being inclusive in how we allocate capital, how we allocate resources, and how we sort of allocate the opportunity amongst all those who are seeking to participate.
Absolutely. Antoine, same question from your perspective.
I have to second everything that my panelists that said, T and Barrington, but to kind of chime in a little bit more on that, I'll be able to speak directly from my background, being from the west side of Chicago and actually experiencing, the war on drugs and how it affected myself and my family. I hate to say that I'm probably the only male in my immediate family that has not been arrested for cannabis. But with that being said, just growing up and the things that I have seen and how it has derailed the males in my family, and then for me to go off to college to start doing research about it, and then to be able to recognize the industry as a whole that was coming to the nation, then strategically seeing the opportunity that was coming here in Alabama, I think it's very important and critical that minorities are able to participate in this industry. And from my perspective, it's more important that we are able to participate as owners. As I like to tell my friends and my peers here in the state of Alabama, we're more than labor, we're more than consumers, we're owners, and we know how to run a successful business. So I think it's very important that we make sure that minorities are able to succeed in this industry so that we can be able to make sure that we usher in a new wave of minorities to be able to get into the industry, or just a list of new professionals that you don't necessarily have to touch the plant, but it's a wealth of things that we can be able to do professionally wise in this industry to be able to stand it up and make sure that it's sustainable, inclusive and equitable.
Yeah, you got to talk to from this perspective. I want you guys to talk to the Black entrepreneurs that are out on here today that are listening, and to everyone that's here. Let's dial this in. Let's really go deep. Entrepreneurship started out in the realm of thinking about an operator, being able to be a successful operator, having operations, being a cultivator, a retailer, a delivery, you name it. That has been like the initial kind of pathway. Is that pathway realistic? Does it make sense? Is that something? What's the reality of that pathway? And I want to start with you, Antoine, because you are, being someone that just was awarded a license on the cultivation side. Speak to the realistic aspect of that, and then we'll go from there.
I'll just say this. Everybody's not meant to be an operator and an owner. It's not an easy path, and it's not meant for everybody. because it really takes and it draws a lot out of you. You know, you got to have the work ethic to be able to get a lot of stuff done. You got to have the relentlessness to be able to see a lot of things through. So just to be able to say that everybody can be able to get into the space and be an owner and to be able to stand things up is kind of, in my opinion, unrealistic. However, it's still strategic other ways that it's still strategic ways that people can still be able to get involved and still be a part of the industry in some form of some way. You know, with my challenges that I have faced here in the state of Alabama, with even, you know, being proactive as an advocate here in the state of Alabama, going down to the state capitol, you know, speaking in front of the commission to make sure we got the bill outside of the committee to be able to get it to the floor, that it's able to get a vote so we can finally have the program. You know, I've been very intimate about the process that it goes on here in the state, and a lot of folks may not, you know, they may not really know of, but some folks just not interested in doing that. So it's a lot of steps that you have to necessarily take to actually, you know, become an operator and to be able to see your visions and dreams to fruition. So it's about, you know, just more important, just kind of recognizing yourself as an individual, you know, really asking yourself what it is that you want to do in the industry and what you're capable of doing, and sticking to your skills and your talents and honing in on those and just doing it in cannabis. So for example, since I done kind of grew within the state, I have made a lot of friends and relationships, and I do a lot in the state. And everybody I encounter, you know, I made somebody that got a camera, they're a photographer. I say, well, what you do? Well, I just shoot. Well, you need to be a photographer in cannabis. I've run into a couple of attorneys. Well, what you doing? Well, I study law, business, or anything like that. Well, you need to do it in cannabis. And with myself, you know, I'm an engineer by nature, but I don't know what I was thinking on becoming a farmer and getting to the agriculture space, because that's actually harder than getting my engineering degree. But it's just to be able to have that grit to be able to get it done and see it through, and not to be able to, you know, be able to gracefully take a loss as a lesson, to be able to use it as a building block to continue to move forward. Because myself as an individual, I've been denied multiple times a license here in the state, but was finally awarded my license the third time after presenting in front of the Alabama Cannabis Commission on why I should be awarded a license. So if you don't necessarily have those, I guess you can call them skills or talents, you know, you may not be able to do certain things, but you can still be able to develop and grow to be able to get into it. But to say everybody can be an operator, I'll be lying to you if I said that everybody has had the capability of getting it done.
I'd like to add, oh, sorry, Roz.
No, go T. I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the other things that I see a lot is there is a farce that if you become an operator, you're going to make a lot of money. And the reality is that there are very, very, very few profitable cannabis companies. And even even really strong operators, because of the tax structures, specifically around federal taxes, but even state excise taxes and then like all kinds of taxes, even really sophisticated, really great operators are not making money. And so it is really devastating when you see these social equity licensing processes happen, that folks are eventually are awarded a license, and then maybe they even find an investor who gives them $1 million, and they think that they are going to be millionaires. And the reality is, typically, most people do not have sufficient capital, never mind to start up, but to sustain not making and or losing money over a long period of time. And so a lot of these businesses are effectively smothered in their cribs before they even are started, because they don't have sufficient capital. They might have sufficient capital to do a build out, but then they don't have enough to buy inventory, which then turns into borrowing very expensive debt, which then means from a margin and tax perspective, typically a company has to double their revenue to service 12% debt. But if you're a small business and a brown business, you might be paying 18% or 20% debt. And so, you know, so then ultimately the structures, like the game is very, 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 very hard, even if you have sufficient capital and even if you're a sophisticated operator. And so it is a very, very brutal space. I think that there are a lot of opportunities within brands in particular that are more capital efficient, that you don't have to specifically touch the plant. It's really a marketing company, which is what a lot of people want to do and what they think building a brand is. But if you're growing weed, like you are a farmer, like Antoine said, and you can't leave. And if you run a store, you have to like be in your store. Like you're like, I want to throw a party. It's like, no, you need traffic in your store. And so like a lot of what people imagine the work to be, as well as like I'm the COO and the CFO of a sophisticated retail operation, and I had to fix the toilet seat because nobody knew how to do it. And so, you know, it's like, it's not glamorous. And even, like I said, even great and well-capitalized operators are not making money. And so to sustain that slog, it is like breaking rocks in the hot sun. and then digging a hole, dumping the rocks in, and then digging them back out, and then breaking them again. It's brutal. And like you can talk to, I can introduce you to hundreds of solid operators who are not making money, who would make more money if they got a normal job or worked for someone else in their cannabis business.
So are we selling our community short, specifically those people that paid a price, that we're asking them to repair their harm? Like we're saying, hey, become an operator, this social equity program, entrepreneurship. Baron, like, how do we square that conversation up when we know, like, the compliance and everything, like, it's not your backyard growing, and from an operational perspective?
Look, I think number one, entrepreneurship is not for everyone, right? I think, I've had this talk with numerous groups, and if you want to be an entrepreneur because you don't like your job, that's probably not enough to keep you going through the very difficult times. If you like, and so add to it, entrepreneurship is hard even in well-established and much in industries that are much more tidy than this one. These are far from ideal conditions, and so entrepreneurship in this industry is especially hard. But I think that the opportunity that I think we all see here is that the ability to participate in the wealth that's being created by the end of prohibition is the larger opportunity. And then there are, within that framework, I think there are avenues that you can choose. If entrepreneurship is for you, then there's that opportunity, and there may be, it may be important for us to come back to and talk about other ways of participating in the wealth that's being created here, either through investment or through employment or through whatever. Like, there are other ways that our people can participate in this industry and in the wealth that's being created as legalization, this process of legalization sort of happens. I think that, I do think that the conversation around, to answer your question, rather, I do think that the conversation around licenses has become in the last few years dramatically, like, sort of overblown. Like, I think that people have an unrealistic expectation of what winning a license means and what it can and will do, and, like, sort of what happens next, right? Like, so we have, states have created programs and created licensing schemes that have, prioritized people who have been, directly impacted by the war on drugs. And that's great, or it would be great if capital markets supported concepts like that, right? Like, if there were a way for the capital, to another point that my co-panelists have made, if the capital structures available, like, if capital worked that way, things might be different. But today, the ability to access, capital for this industry is difficult for anyone. It's more difficult for Black and brown entrepreneurs who have difficulty accessing capital markets in anything, right? Like, set cannabis aside, it's harder for us to get loans for anything, for homes, for any small business, traditional industries. And so I think what we have to do is be really clear when crafting programs or developing, like, sort of support services. Like, we have to be really clear with people about what you're signing up for. Winning a license or owning the license or being the operator is a slog. It is difficult. It is capital intensive. And if you don't have the ability to access capital that allows your business model to thrive, then you're going to be burning cash for the foreseeable future, because that's just what this is. Like, in an industry that doesn't have access to sort of normalized systems for capitalization, that's just what this is going to be. And so I think we do have to be, like, really clear with folks who are interested in entering in that way.
Yeah. T, tell me this: should we, if I'll take Florida as an example. You have some Black farmers who were written into the bill in order to be able to participate in a very lucrative market and opportunity. Now they're able to get their license. How should we feel as in the Black community should when that license holder, that operator decides to just go ahead and sell it back out to another corporate structure? What's your thoughts on that? How should we take it personal? Should we look at it as their pathway to their own generational wealth? I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times, like to Barrington's point earlier, like a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to get a license, and then they have it, and then the reality sets in of what it will take to operationalize. And so, you know, and there's not a lot of available capital in this industry. So I'm not mad at people who have a license, realize that they can't commercialize it, or that they aren't able to withstand a slog of making no money for many, many years while they work countless hours. And sorry, I had an inbound call that was a little distracting. And so for them to cash out, I'm not mad at people cashing out, because it's like, you know, some people can sell licenses for 6 figures or even into the millions of dollars, which is life-changing money for them. And I'm not going to fault anyone who's going to accept life-changing money when they realize they aren't down for the slog, because like that's money that is still within our community and is going to our people, and that can have a huge impact on their family and their people. And right. So I think, you know, many states, along with these social equity programs, have promised capital and then it's never shown up. Yes. So I mean, that's part of the farce as well. And no, I mean, I think, you know, in fact, like the company I work for, we're trying to acquire licenses, and I'm having a hard time convincing people to take big checks, because they're like, no, this piece of paper is worth $10 million. And I'm like, okay, well, in a year I will buy it from you for 50 grand, or it will be worth nothing. And so I think people, these outsized expectations is an issue, and people have to make decisions about what's best for them and their life and their family. And if somebody is willing to give you $1 million or $750,000 or $500,000 for a piece of paper that you spend a couple hours on, you could go talk to a busy bar owner who's busy and you think is crushing it, and you could ask them, have you, in your whole 10 years of owning your bar, pulled $500,000 worth of cash out of that bar? And I can guarantee you most of them would say absolutely not. Yeah. And so it's like, to have life-changing money, and then you could still participate in the industry or invest a little bit or do whatever you want, you know. But I think I am supportive of people, our people in particular, getting those deals and doing those deals all day.
Absolutely, absolutely, and not making those folks feel guilty about wanting to look at the next thing. Antoine, I see your head shaking. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd just like to chime in on that, because that's something that I actually dealt with a few different times. And, you know, this may sound crazy when I say this, that I have turned down a $5 million offer plenty of times. Shoot, the count is 3. I turned it down 3 times. I don't know what I was thinking, but I ask folks, you know, what is your purpose for really entering, and what is it that you're really trying to do? And the vision that I have for Alabama and my people here in Alabama, I have to be an owner in order to be able to make that happen. And I'm willing to allow folks to be able to come on, but I'm not willing to give up the control, because I have not fulfilled, you know, my vision and my duty that I want to be able to set out for the people here in Alabama, as well as you know, the industry here in the state as we continue to grow and develop. I'm not quick to just want to make the exit, and it will be lovely. I'm not gonna lie to you, because this is a very tough industry and it's not easy. However, it's all about what it is that you want to do and how have you prepared yourself to be able to, you know, to withstand the challenges as they come. You know, for example, you know, some folks may be leasing properties, you know, to start getting their process and everything going. I strategically started years ago where I actually acquired property for the purpose of my medical cannabis cultivation operation, where I started up as a farmer. So, you know, a lot of the bills or overhead that other folks deal with as a license holder, you know, I'm able to kind of avoid a lot of that as well. When it even went to actually applying for my application, I'm one of the unique individuals here in the state of Alabama that I solely compiled my application myself with the help of some good friends. And then those that are familiar with the process, or the application process, that here in Alabama, it wasn't an easy feat. So you had to be very strategic about what it is that you was inspired to do. So a lot of folks, it's all love for anybody that want to sell their license. If you get it and you're able to get some money off of, you know, we come from a different kind of background. If you're able to flip it a couple of times to get what you put in and some, go ahead and make your money. No, there's no shame in that. However, if you really about, you know, want to make an impact and changing, you know, generations down the line and really encouraging and inspiring other folks to be able to, you know, kind of take those unorthodox risks to be able to enter the industry and strategically enter the industry, you have to be an example of that. And you have to be able to continue to lead and just serve as a source of inspiration as you continue to grow and develop an industry, well, I'll say the emerging industry here in my great state.
I will add, though, that a lot of folks think that there will be exits one day. And if you look at some of the more mature states where the macro forces of California, Colorado, in the West in particular, we're seeing that, some of Michigan, you know, a lot of people did like operated, they were solid, and then the price tanks, the price of flower tanks. I mean, there are so many things outside of our control, and this industry is particularly unstable that even people that like we're making money for a few years, it's like, you know, it's like the Bible, the lean times and the fertile times. Like it is like, even then there are people right now, many operators in California that are saying, please take the keys and just pay my taxes. And so, you know, I think it's brutal. And you know, and to Antoine's point though, like if you are relentless enough to and have enough sense and capital to withstand the slog, then you might make it. But even then, there are people that have withstood a slog in California for a long, long time that can't do it anymore. And so it's rough.
Antoine, you always say something. I just want you to really dive into this and highlight it. You talk about preparation and the art of being prepared. The better prepared you are in understanding, anticipating how that really sets the pathway for success. I would love for you to share your insight on that.
All right, so you know, as my coach used to, my football and wrestling coach used to always tell me, you know, proper preparation prevents poor performance. And with my background being an engineer, I'm able to see a full scope of the picture of the image, but I'm also able to change my scope down to the micro to be able to see the small steps that it takes to be able to execute that. So when I go about making a lot of my decisions, I always deal with my worst case scenario. If I'm able to live my worst case scenario, then I'm able to make that decision. So when I actually enter the cannabis industry, like I said, I probably did over a decade of research preparing for the opportunity here. Then we got the 2018 Farm Bill and things signed like that. I started to be able to do a little bit more research. And then that's when I strategically started to look for organizations where I can be able to learn, to be able to tap into folks that was already doing the things that I'm inspired to do, to be able to leech from them, you know, to be able to get the wisdom and the insight to be able to better prepare myself for the position here in Alabama. And at the time when I was talking about cannabis in Alabama, ain't nobody believed that Alabama was going to do what it did. And a lot of folks seeing this young Black man, you know, in Alabama talking about how he want to do cannabis and how strategically wanted to enter the space. Once you kind of get around good folks and good people and your energy is solid and you're genuine what it is and authentic it is what it is that you want to do, people will tend to help you. And that was really my best preparation. So I had joined Minorities for Medical Marijuana back in, I think, 2019. And then we ended up having the cannabis bill kind of started rolling out. And I was able to pull from Roz and the organization to how to better prepare ourselves and be able to be able to speak in front of these legislators about the program and making sure that, you know, we have minority participation and ownership as this program continue to roll out. But I also had to execute small steps to be able to get to that point. So I had to make sure I had my land in place. I had to make sure my business, everything is structured. I had to make sure I understood the rules and regulations. And this is why I tell any expired cannabis entrepreneur in your respected market, know the rules and regulations better than anybody else. Any consultant that you bring on, know the rules and regulations better than them so you can be able to have a high level conversation about how you can be able to better prepare yourself. Because if you don't know the rules and regulations, they're going to sell you smoke. It ain't going to be nothing good for you. You're going to still end up going under after you done spend so much money on a consultant to be able to help you out. But once you know the rules and regulations, you can better be able to strategically prepare yourself to be able to withstand the opportunity, the things that are to come. So I'll speak specifically about my denial here in the state of Alabama. I was denied twice. And when we went about preparing my application, once we was accepted, and then we had to make changes because of deficiencies, and then once they really started to look at it, it was a part of the rules and regulation that allowed a 30-day window for the public to be able to chime in. And I was very active. I'm in the boots on the ground here in the state of Alabama. I am connected with the grassroots organizations. I am connected with the people, the HBCUs here in the state. I'm connected with the youth here in the state. So when it came time for the public to be able to chime in, I knew I had to figure out a factor that would separate me from everybody else to be able to give me that little bit of edge. So once my support became overwhelming here in the state, and then the state continuously denied me, and they constantly keep seeing me, like I'm at every commission meeting, you have to make sure that you have the bandwidth to be able to execute all the things it is that you want to do. You have to be at these commission meetings. These commissions need to see you. You need to go and speak to these committees. These legislators, they need to know you. And I also strategically got the overwhelming amount of support from the media here in the state of Alabama. So anything that the commission do, or they want to know anything about the cannabis space, they kind of come to me. And I wouldn't call myself the guru, but I am a recognized leader here in the state of Alabama now that I have strategically prepared myself and continue to work to make sure that we're able to secure the license and do the things that we're excited to do. And it's probably going to lead into our next conversation as well, too, to be able to, with us having a novice industry and us and growing, we have to make sure we create a sustainable industry, and that's where it's going to come in with workforce development. Nobody in the state of Alabama as an owner or applicant that was going for a license was even thinking about workforce development. And I was strategically making sure that I create a pipeline for Black and brown people to be able to get experience in the industry, to be able to enter the industry, and to be able to get credible experience, and ultimately giving us the opportunities to be able to enter the industry. And like I was telling, like as an owner, I control a lot of the pieces. I decide who gets certain contracts. I decide who gets to do my electricity. I get to decide who's my HVAC guy. I get to decide who's my general contractor. I get to decide who cuts my grass. So it's to that point that I want to be able to strategically put, people of color in place to be able to do those tasks and fulfill those duties and responsibilities, so they can be able to get that experience as well as we continue to grow and expand out here. So you got to be able to see the big picture. If you're just looking at the scope of just, I want to get this license and I think I'm gonna get a whole bunch of money with the license, I hate to tell you that you're lying to yourself and you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to be able to create multiple outlets for that. If something goes wrong, you have to be able to quickly pivot to be able to make whatever it is that you want to do happen.
Absolutely. And this is a great segue, because one of the biggest hurdles for those license holders, those operators, even sometimes ancillary businesses in our space, is access to capital. And we throw around that phraseology so willy-nilly, access to capital, access to capital. And Barrington, I want you to just break it down, the reality that if you are a large business, a small business that's in the industry, looking for capital is challenging. But being a Black entrepreneur and knowing the historic nature of lack of capital for Black-owned businesses, why it's critical and why it's such a big issue now and during this time.
I appreciate the question. Let me first say, I think it should be apparent to everyone that Antoine is absolutely one of those sort of special people who has not only like the mind for entrepreneurship and for being an operator in this industry, but also like sort of the energy and the engagement. Like he talked about participating in not only the legislative process of the law being passed in the state of Alabama, but then the rulemaking, the regulatory process, as well as understanding the importance of having real estate. And so when there are definitely times when the intersection of, again, the mind for this and the energy for this and to some degree capital, because you were able to go out and acquire real estate, early before it was absolutely required for you to have it. And so you're able to put yourself in position to win the next point, right? To be able to make that next shot. And so congrats to you and kudos to you for having done that. But I think it also should point out that like there are plenty of people who we would love to see, again, participate in the wealth that's being created by the legalization of cannabis, who don't necessarily have the preparation for that moment, right? Who don't necessarily have the ability or have the inclination, frankly, to track this from when it was just a baby bill, when it was just a couple of legislators who thought they might one day be able to get this to happen, all the way to the point where they are now it is now law. There are regulations, and they are actually issuing licenses. That's a long path, a thankless path, and a path that doesn't produce any revenue. It is all spending. There's no money that comes back from you having participated in that over the last several years. So just again, to emphasize the point that like this really is a slog at every level. Even the pre-operation part of it is very much a slog and an investment of time and energy that one really has to be prepared for in order to be successful in it. I think, access to is the capital is the lifeblood of any business. Like, set cannabis aside, this has nothing to do with the specifics of the cannabis industry. Without having normalized access to capital, there are very few entrepreneurs in very few industries that would be able to build successful and scale any sort of business, right? It is normalized access to capital. And really, to be specific, it's the full suite. It's access to the full suite of financial products and services that are available in our economy. One of the reasons that cannabis is so difficult is because we have very limited access. The industry writ large just has, even before you talk about the challenges that Black entrepreneurs have in getting, bank accounts, but even before that, the industry writ large just does not have normalized access to capital or a normal cost of capital. And so, to the points that my colleagues here have been making, that simply makes everything harder and everything more expensive, right? Everything is much more difficult and much more expensive because every dollar is competitive and every dollar is much more expensive than it would be if this were a lemonade stand. I think there's another important point, and Raj, you and I have gone around to U.S. Senate offices, all over the place, like sort of having this conversation that another thing that we have to understand is that small businesses, entrepreneurs, and Black-owned businesses, our valuation is in many ways a function of the valuation of the largest and most successful cannabis companies out there, right? So if a company like Trulieve or Curaleaf or Cresco Labs, if their valuation is only 1 or 1.5 times their annual revenue, then ours is less than our valuation, and therefore the capital that we'll be able to raise and the cost of that capital is ultimately a function of what they are doing. So if you can invest in Trulieve at 1.5 times revenue, we certainly are not going to get a valuation that's as high as a company that does the $1 billion or whatever they do in annual revenue. And so understanding that connection and how capital markets treat small business, how it is that small businesses do in fact raise capital, and how that capital, it's very limited in this industry, but then the terms and the cost of that capital, and how that interplay between our access to capital and the big publicly traded companies' access to capital, sort of how that works, is critically important for people to understand before jumping off into this and risking so much.
And it's so clear that as much as we fight the MSO, we're interrelated, regardless if you're equity or not. There is a dependency, and this is why you look at having policy at the federal level that is going to maybe open some of those doors, because I believe in I believe in economics and creating opportunity, and I believe in windows. And T, you said it, and I really want to pitch over to you. You mentioned about the value, time, money, value, right? What you get today may not be what you get tomorrow. And so equity is not about just pure ownership. It's about the value of being able to get what you want if you have paper to get the value of that today. And if we don't create an infrastructure for that to happen for the whole entire industry, equity loses, the industry loses. It's a flop. So as my last question before I go to our audience with their questions, T, we've been talking about entrepreneurship and about the strategies of success? What are some of the conditions and the issues? But what's some of the responsibility? What is our responsibility? You as a COO of the owner and founder of a beverage company, the COO of a retail establishment that's state of the art. What are some of your priorities as an entrepreneur, as a Black owner for your community, your people? Please share.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have a lot of views on social equity and a path to economic justice. And, for me as an entrepreneur throughout my whole career, I've always been very, very focused. The community impact starts with how we treat our people and their people. So as a leader and as a business owner, there are a lot of folks that want to talk about economic justice and then don't pay their people right. Like, so for example, our hourly workers have 4 weeks paid time off, because for an hourly worker who's living paycheck to paycheck, if they have the flu or COVID, because there's no COVID leave anymore, if they have the flu or their kid gets sick or whatever happens, and they don't have paid time off, it is completely derailing to their lives, completely. Or for example, we pay 100% of our employee healthcare, because for a lot of folks that premium is brutal, and then they opt out to not have healthcare, and then it creates these entire spirals. And so, I think that when people talk about social justice, one of the biggest steps is how do you treat your own team, which is probably and likely very diverse, and certainly at the highest concentration of diversity in the cannabis industry is in those front lines. And because otherwise people run around and get awards for philanthropy while they pay their own team slightly above minimum wage. And so I think that it's and there's actually a lot of people say they can't afford it, but there's a lot of math and work done on retention. And if you don't have to retrain people, that it actually makes more sense to pay your people right in the first place. But I do think that, workforce development and career development, and by investing in your people, whether that's that they stay and build their careers with you, or they stay in the industry and it's a springboard, because it's a small industry and everyone sort of knows each other. And so I think that that's where I see a lot of missed opportunities right now amongst entrepreneurs, that they want to build great businesses, but they are not necessarily as attentive to how they take care of their own team, which is typically a super diverse workforce.
Absolutely. Guys, we got a little bit of time. It's about 5:10. I know we started right at 4:20. Everybody that's on with us today, the questions is open. Please put your question in there. I'm just going to kind of go through right now, because we want to really address some of your questions and things that are popping up on your mind, and making sure that we just do this in a rapid round of answering and giving some feedback from our panelists. So the first question I have is, how can we support the interests of those entrepreneurs in the industry? What can we do to help level the playing field? And I'll just throw that out there to anyone.
I say the best way to be able to support folks in cannabis business in other states, if you're not able to spend money with them, money is all, as we just had the conversation about capital. Money is what drives it all. But even if you're not able to provide any financial support, simply just support them. Share anything they got going on. Tell folks about them. Spread the word. If you meet somebody that's in the space or in the state, make sure to try to make some introductions, or simply just be a conduit or a resource to them that you can be able to uplift them and speak highly of them in certain other conversations if you're not able to financially support them. So, for example, I'll use myself. I've been getting a lot of support with a lot of stuff and the work it is that I've been doing, and as well, I create certain content and share it on my social medias, my LinkedIn, and things like that. And all I simply just ask for folks to share it. Help me expand my reach, my bandwidth, to be able to connect with other folks and individuals so they can learn more about me and what it is that I'm doing here in the States, so we can be able to develop or create a conversation and continue to grow and create something sustainable here.
Awesome. Then the next question I have is, how do we get young advocates and enthusiasts trained and educated just on the industry in general, and especially coming from our community? What's your thoughts?
Reach out to our youth. Get them inspired, get them involved. And I'll speak specifically about what it is that I've been doing here in the great state of Alabama with me being a alumni of my HBCU, Alabama A&M University, and with me, some of the work that I do for Tuskegee University as well, my connection and relationships with Alabama State University. My goal is to be able to create a educational, cannabis education program and also help create a workforce certification program so we can be able to create a developed and solid workforce for those that want to be aspire to enter the space. But as well, going back to these universities and speaking to them, you know, myself as an owner, I can be able to speak to a lot of different aspects that a lot of these college students, they are currently in school for accounting degrees, or they're in school for agriculture degrees, and just being able to shine a little bit of light and give them some insight on how they can be able to use those degrees in the cannabis industry. So we have to be able to provide them with the necessary advice, knowledge, and just aspirations on how they can be able to enter the space. But we must meet them where they are and let them know about the opportunities that's coming down the line to be able to create a sustainable and evolving industry.
And I think that part of that is recognizing that like the cannabis industry in many ways is like every other industry, that in most ways, frankly, is like every other industry, and it needs the same things that every other industry needs. And so, you know, if you're studying to be an electrical engineer, an indoor cannabis cultivation facility is a massive electrical engineering project, right? If you're studying mechanical engineering, if you're studying public policy, right? Like creative minds in economics and public policy are valuable to every state that is considering any sort of expansion of their licensing program. And so just thinking about the thing that you already know how to do, or the thing that you are already passionate about, the thing that you're already sort of good at, right? And how do you apply that to the cannabis industry? Because we need it. We need whatever it is, whether it's business and finance, public policy, economics, electrical, mechanical engineering, right? Like we consume those services like any other industry that develops, you know, consumer packaged goods.
Yeah, yeah. You
Let me say this too one more time, Roz. Shout out to my distinguished brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. A voteless people is a hopeless people, and it is very pivotal that we get our youth involved in the legislative process. Because since I've been kind of moving around throughout the state, a lot of them don't vote, and some of them don't choose not to vote because they don't understand what it is. So we must encourage everybody to participate in a legislative process to really encourage the change that we really want to see.
Absolutely. And I want to put a period behind both of your comments by saying that if there's anyone out there that has the ability to bring on interns, last summer, M4MM had 7 interns from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, who got a real world experience, and they were paid internship. So we don't want to give them free. You got to pay them. But if you have that opportunity where you can create a budget and create the space for them this summer, please reach out to M4MM, because that is a critical opportunity when you talk about education, to go and be able to work on site and spend your whole entire summer being in the throes of a cannabis company and seeing all the different levels and the different areas of interest is powerful. T, question for you. Where do you find license holders who want to sell or acquire a new partner? And this was in response to your comment about the California folks. People have a license, they're trying to sell. How do we find those folks? How do we find people that are in, New Jersey, New York, who are like, hey, I don't know what I want to do right now. I need a new partner, or I want to just sell.
Yeah, so a great source is, so there's the International Cannabis Bar Association. So cannabis attorneys know all the operators. So whether that's for compliance reasons or for licensing reasons, but cannabis attorneys tend to have a tight network. They all know each other. And they know kind of all of the groups that you can get tied into, but certainly many of the operators, and they would be the most aware of if their client is looking for a transaction.
Yeah. Any comment, Barrington?
No, I would agree. I mean, I would also say, like, if you go to, if you go to like sort of the social, the cannabis sort of the cannabis sort of social events and kind of
industry hangouts, yeah,
and just kind of say like, hey, I've got a pocket of capital and I'm looking to acquire. It will take only a few minutes for them to start looking for you, in fact.
Yeah. And conversely, if you're the one that has the license, there are entities and there's groups out here. One, you don't have to apologize if you want to sell your license. We need to come up from underneath that cloak, right? And so if you do have it, you can be able to put it out there so that if that's your pathway to family generational wealth, then tap into organizations like, SEEN in Chicago, Illinois, like, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, like MCBA. There's regionalized, national, and local organizations. And this really plays into one of the questions that came up in regards to how do I stay connected? Barrington, I got a question for you. And actually, she wants to get a plug. So Felicia, she has a license, but she's looking for a capital partner, but her license is really uniquely situated next to, or has the ability to be well, I guess, is situated next to a casino, next to a pocket area. Again, this person is looking for capital. What should she be thinking about as she's looking for capital? She's like, I want to use my license. I want to build it out. I don't want to lose it. I'm on a time clock. What can she do today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there are definitely some folks that have licenses and have locations that are really compelling. And so this I think depends on the market that she's in. If this is a very different answer to this question for someone who's in California or Colorado or Oklahoma versus someone who's in Illinois or New Jersey or New York, right? Like those are very, very different opportunities. And so, but I think that and I think that like capital allocators in cannabis are very, are sophisticated and specific about the types of opportunities and the types of risks that they're looking to take. I think I'm happy to help. This one is so specific that like if I can put my email address or whatever in the chat and if kind of help dive in and be happy to answer some questions about.
And I would add, just on a very like zoomed out version, having an investable plan, an investable team is really key because no one's going to hand anyone millions of dollars and with an expectation that they're going to make that money back plus some unless there is an investable plan and an investable team. So it can't be like I got a piece of paper and an idea for a brand and think that people are going to give you money. The other component of that is people often want very high valuations where they're like, oh, well, this piece of paper and me with no plan is worth $20 million. Now, the problem is, let's say somebody gave you money on those terms and you ever needed to raise more money again, the whole show is wrecked. And so also, if you're not sophisticated about putting these kinds of deals together, if you've never really raised capital to really, really understand how the dynamics of those deals work, because often people set themselves up because of a notion of a valuation being something important versus like what are the terms and the pressure that comes with this level of capital. So, but I think investable team and plan are the basics regardless of the broader circumstance.
Well, listen, guys, Aisha is back on, so I think she's about to pull the rope on me because I have some more questions. Listen, everyone that's tuned in today, first and foremost, we want to thank you because this issue is very intentional and specific to us as panelists today. But the fact that you're spending your time and learning and engaging, and thank you, C-Lab, for making this a priority. We so appreciate it. I want to encourage folks, if you want to reach out to M4MM, go to M as in Mary, the number 4, M as in Mary, united.org. Send us a comment. If you want to find some of these people that are on the stage with me today, just say, hey, I want to get connected with Antoine or T or Barrington, whatever it is. If you want to get connected and if you want to find your tribe, I'm telling you, ain't no better place like M4MM. I thank you guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having us. And Aisha, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Roz. And I'm sorry to have to be the classical music coming in at the Oscars, making you wrap up. But look, everyone's working. So I cannot thank all of you enough, our esteemed panelists. Your wisdom and your experience is so appreciated. And I think you can see from the engagement that we've had today that this is a topic that people want to hear more about. So as always, at C-Lab, we want to give you what you want. We listen to you. If you want more more information like this, more of these type of discussions, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to give you the information that matters most. And of course, if you are looking to either enter the cannabis industry from a job standpoint, if you are a business owner and you're trying to help build your team, that is what I do. I work for Flower Hire, and our whole mission is to build a better and more equitable cannabis community by getting the right people into the right jobs. So once again, thanks everyone. Thank you C-Lab. Thank you to M4MM for giving us this platform. And look out for us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. This panel will be posted later on, so you can revisit this great talk, and we will see you next month. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.